Hi, I just wanted to do a video with a few tips and tricks about using a sawmill. This is your standard bandsaw type sawmill. I don't really know who makes it. It's actually not mine, but I have full use of it. And it's on my property. But anyways, oh, it's a big bug. Wow, look at this bug. Holy fuck. Check it out, boys. That's one hell of a beetle. I'd say that's a longhorn spruce beetle. They like to eat these trees here. He doesn't like me too much. But anyways, you get your standard type sawmill. As you can see, I've been milling up a lot of wood. I'm not a professional by any means, but I know quite a few little tricks and I can't talk today. Tricks and tips to tell you. Number one, always make sure, if you look at the log, you can tell I have the smaller side closer to my saw. You want to keep your smaller side first because that's the maximum size you can go. So when you mill your log, make sure when you load your log on that you load it with the smaller side on first. That way you don't end up sitting there taking 100 chunks off trying to figure out why it takes so long. Another quick and easy tip, get yourself a couple planks if you have a sawmill like this, and a peavey. That's a peavey if you're wondering. You've probably seen them. You just drive that into the side of the log. You can roll it over, which is really good when you're dealing with larger logs like these. When you're running the sawmill, never ever, when you're running it, you're buzzing along and you get stuck, do not back up. If you back up, the blade will fly off every time. I've never seen anybody tell you that on any other videos, but never ever take your blade backwards. It's just a recipe for disaster and it's gonna fly off. And then you got to take everything apart, put your blade back on. You may damage your blade or your machine, so it's definitely not worth it. Some other tips. When you load your log, like I said, with the smaller side to the saw side, a lot of times when you first load your log on, you're going to find that, it's not level. It's down like this because this side's way thinner. Your best bet is to actually prop this side up a little bit and get it up so your top is pretty much level, and then take a skim cut, kind of like this. Now this is my second or third, but take a skim cut off the top, then you roll your log 180 degrees, and then you have you take your shim out, you'll have a perfectly level log, and then you can do a perfect cut off the other side. That way you get minimal loss, and you get the best bang for your buck out of your log. Because if you're like me and cut big trees like this down by yourself and drag them around, you definitely want to get the most bang for your buck out of your log. Now, another thing, as you see, this has dogs here. Different sawmills have different rigs. What I do for my third cut, which is something else nobody ever showed me, is I turn my log that way, or maybe even completely flip it over, and bring up this side so I turn the dogs around and bring them up high so that I can square the log against the dogs and get an actually perfectly square log every time. Very quick, easy way to do it. I've checked it with a level every time I've done it. I did for a while, and every time it was bang on. So it's definitely the way to do it. Those are some quick, easy ones. Now again, there's other things that, like, you might have curved logs that are kind of curved like that. I don't know if it's better to have it like that or upside down, like that. I don't really know which way is best for that, but you have to gauge your logs, I guess, as you go. Sometimes some are better, some are worse. Some logs just go wonky. I had this log here I cut a couple weeks ago. It's all split. The core, it just started blowing apart and flying apart once we started cutting it. The core of the tree was actually damaged, so it didn't want to cut at all, and well, not properly. But you know, those are just a few quick little tips. Save you, you know, using excess wood somewhat, and should also, you know, make your cuts better. You also want to make sure, you know, your guides are properly set. Like I have this way out right now, but that's to accommodate the end of the log. You got to make sure you keep your guides properly adjusted and close as you can to the board so you don't get whoops and bends and whatnot. Make sure you have a good water feed. I have mine shut off. I just have a simple little gravity loop here, but just pull that down and that'll drip. You want pretty much a constant drip, not pouring on it, but you know, almost steady drip. And one other tip I just figured out: if you're like me, you cut down the trees, you know, you might get a lot of sap on you, especially like this tree here that I'm moving around. The butts of it, I just cut it the other day. It's a little fresh, so it's very green and very sappy. So I got sap all over myself, and I had sap on my arm here. Now it's pretty much gone. Actually, it's gone except for on my shirt. What I used, I tried dish soap, I tried Windex. You know, that's not the best stuff to spray on you, but neither is this. But none of that stuff touched it, so I figured I'd come out to the shed. Didn't have any WD-40, but I'm not a huge fan of WD-40 for a lot of purposes except cleaning. But didn't have any of that, so I got the next best thing, which is actually probably better. Good old Seafoam. You might have heard of Deep Creep too. This, you know, this is the same thing that you know, you put in your car and stuff. It works great. It's a great cleaner. It's a great lubricant. I sprayed a little of that on my arm. My whole arm was just covered in sap and sticky, and just a little of that on my arm, wiped it off, and the sap came off like nothing. So, you know, quick, easy way to get some sap off you, which can be a real pain in the ass sometimes. And anyways, hopefully that'll keep you from milling your arm off, and keep you from being frustrated, and make it a lot easier for you to use your sawmill, and you know, make it productive. It's a lot of work, especially if it's a manual mill like this, and you know, you're moving the logs yourself. If they're old or fresher logs and they're heavy or hardwood, you know, you got to take a lot of care when you move stuff around, especially if you're working by yourself, because right now I am, and I got to be careful, because if you know, I slip, a big log like that comes rolling over, that'll snap my leg like a twig. So got to make sure you know what you're doing, or at least, you know, pay attention so you don't break your antlers off or something, right? You know, nobody wants to trip to the hospital, especially when you're all by yourself, because that makes it all that much harder. So anyways, like I said, keep safe, but you know, it's fun to mill. I like milling. I really, you know, I'm just started out doing it recently, but I definitely recommend it to anybody who wants to, you know, well, has the resources like us. You know, we live in the woods here. We got tons of trees. We got 10 acres of trees. So we have more than enough wood, so it makes it well worth it. Or maybe you have supply logs, whatever. One of these little mills, you can actually build one fairly easily. I've seen a lot of videos on that on YouTube. This one obviously isn't. This is a pre-made, but I've seen, you know, some good ones on YouTube that are homemade, and you know, if that's your thing, build one. I just don't have the resources to do that, but this one came along, so it's perfect. And also, it's also good, something else I forgot to mention, a good tip, is to make sure you have a bit of a production yard set up in mind. Like even this, it's a little tight quarters here. We bring in our logs here, right in here, and then we can load them up onto the mill them up, and then we take the finished boards, put them up over here, and then all the slab wood goes back into the dinosaur back there, and I cut the edges, cut it all up, and then throw it in the back, and then that way you don't have a cluttered yard, and you're not tripping over everything trying to get around, because that can be a real pain in the ass, and that can cause accidents, and that's not a good thing when you're dealing with saws and big heavy logs. And anyways, I think that's all the tips I have, except for get one of these things. Something like that again too, if you're moving around logs by yourself, and you don't. I do have a tractor. I have two of them, but sometimes you still have to. You can't always get your tractor where you need to go, and something like that is just the best thing, really. You know, you can load a huge log on that. We had that log when it was twice as long, 16 feet long, 18 inches round, and we had it loaded on that, and we moved it from over behind me to over here. And without it, we would have had to drag it and push it and grunt and groan, and it would have been quite a job for a couple people, but for two people, we moved that pretty easy with just a simple little swivel cart like that. A lot of people call them welder's carts, because that's what they're usually used for, like moving angle iron, big steel beams and whatnot. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a few tips and tricks after this that you can use yourself and increase production. Remember, always keep your dogs at a low level. You never want to hit those. Another trick too, I guess, make sure you keep your log as clean as you can. If you're digging it in the dirt, just give it a wipe. There's a bit of dirt there. Try to get as much as you can off. It'll save your blade and save you money. And especially if there's a little rock in there, you hit a little rock, your blade might kill your blade instantly. So it's definitely well worth it just to give it a quick brush. I carry a broom. I also make sure to keep your tracks clean, which I need to do because I just finished cutting here. You don't want your tracks to get much more dust in them than that, because then they'll clog up your rollers, and then it's hard to push your machine, and that's just not good. Anyways, now I think this is enough. Hopefully you enjoy this video, and don't cut your arm off.